Hey you guys, this is Raphael from Relics.com. I hope you're having a great day. It's a beautiful one down here. And today we're going to talk about something that is affordable and very collectible. It's Confederate currency. And since at the end of the war, the currency was no longer of any value, people just hung on to it, and because it was a neat keepsake even then. There's something that I planned on doing at the end of this, but since everything I do is one take and out, I'm going to read you something to start with. It's a poem that was written in March of 1865 by a Major Jonas. And he wrote it on the back of a Confederate note and gave it to a lady that was kind enough to feed him and a friend. It summarizes the history inside each Confederate note. And if you'll bear with me, there are a lot of people that could do this better, but it's a great poem and most people have never heard it. So you're going to have to listen to this to hear about the currency. Representing nothing on God's earth now and naught in the waters below, as the pledge of a nation that's dead and gone, keep it, dear friends, and show it. Show it to those who lend an ear to the tale this paper can tell, of liberty born of the patriot's dream of a storm-cradled nation that fell. Too poor to possess the precious ores and too much of a stranger to borrow, we issued today our promise to pay and hope to redeem on the morrow. But days flew by, weeks became years, our coffers were empty still. Coin was so scarce that our treasury'd quake if $1 would drop in the till. We knew it had scarcely a value in gold, yet as gold the soldiers received it. It looked in our eyes a promise to pay, and each patriot believed it. But the faith that was in us was strong indeed, and our poverty we well discerned. And these little checks represented the pay that our suffering veterans earned. But our boys thought little of prize or pay, of bills that were long overdue. We knew if it bought us our bread today, 'twas the best our poor country could do. Keep it, it tells our history over, from the birth of a dream to the last. Modest and born of the angel hope, like our hope of success, it passed. And the currency of a nation that lasted 4 years shouldn't have lasted that long, but they were able to build an army, a banking system, and the money wasn't backed up by much but the faith that they mention in that note. The early notes are scarce because nobody thought that the war would last as long without a resolution. So the early notes are tougher to find. They didn't print as many of them. By the end of the war, they were printing tons. And the first note that I would like to talk about is one of them of a style like's on this board. What's cool about these, every note up here is under $100 in value, and you can own one for under $100. I've got a lot on the website, and the first one is one of my favorites because it's got a lot of character. It was printed in 1864, and the collectors know there was a book that was written by a fellow named Grover Criswell. And we owe him a lot of thanks because he identified the styles and gave us something to collect. And they reference each note as its own T number, type. And this one is a type 68. It was printed in 1864. And by the end of the war, remember I said they were printing a lot? They did 9,145,000 of these notes. But it's still cool and it's affordable. You can own most of them for under $50. And what's cool about it, in the center of the note, it's got the image of the flying artillery. It's the cannon being pulled by the artilleryman on horseback. And down in the corner, we have the image of Robert Hunter. And Robert Hunter was from Virginia. Before the war, he was a senator. When the war broke out, he served as Secretary of State and also in the Confederate Senate. they honored a lot of the men in the government by putting them on Confederate currency. That leads to the next note because it's got one of the coolest people that served in the Confederate government. This note shows Judah P. Benjamin. He was a Jewish man. He served several important positions in the Confederate government, including Attorney General, at the time Secretary of War, and Secretary of State. This note's also one that I picked out because of the cool scene in the center. It's the personification of the South striking down the Union. And they used a lot of imagery and personification, and they used images of people and also of goddesses. And that leads to the next one. This one is an early note. It's from 1861. They didn't print as many of them, but they're all, most all of the Confederate notes are beautifully designed. A lot of them are even more works of art than they are currency. And this one is an 1861 $5 note. It's got the little sailor down in the corner. In the center, it has the goddess Commerce. And what I like about this note is it's nice and early. It's got a good look. They didn't print as many of them. And if you notice, the note has slices in it. That's called cut cancellation. When they took this note out of circulation, they had to have a way to take it off the books. So they would cut cancel it, and they'll either do the X slices or they'll cut semicircles out of the bottom. That lets us know that the note was taken out of circulation. And if you want to collect and your budget is limited, if you find one that has those cut cancellations, a lot of times the price is a lot lower. Now for the last one, we were talking about the famous people that they put on notes. Nobody was more famous in the Confederacy than President Jefferson Davis of Mississippi. He was honored on multiple Confederate notes, and this one is the 1864 $50 note. It has the likeness of President Davis in the center, and if you notice, it has stamped serial numbers and signatures. The signatures are all hand done, and they're done for register and for treasurer, which makes it sound like they were the ones doing it. But no, they actually, this is crazy. When I figured this out in a book, it amazed me. They actually paid ladies of Richmond to sit around and sign, and they signed all day long for the register of the Confederacy and for the treasurer of the Confederacy. So that's even another subset that some people collect, is variations of people that signed the notes. By 64, they were stamping those serial numbers. The early ones are handwritten, and the handwriting is one quick way to tell if a note has the possibility of being authentic. It doesn't guarantee it, but it helps, because when they make a modern copy of a note, it will be consistent over the ink of the signatures. Because if you notice, when you handwrite something, the pressure of your hand goes up and down, and it'll make it darker and lighter. If you Xerox it, it's consistent. So look for those light and dark spots on the notes. As I mentioned, the notes are pictured here. There's a few dozen varieties that you can get for under $100, and it's a great way to start collecting. One of the first things that I did was start collecting currency because I couldn't afford guns and swords and cannons. And even though I have been fortunate enough to have those other things, I still love currency. And that's why there's a whole section on the website, ShilohRelics.com, showing Confederate currency. I hope that you have enjoyed this because I've had a lot of fun doing this one. And again, I apologize for my reading. In my younger days, I could repeat that without having to read it, but it gets a little foggy the more years I'm around, and I hope it gets a lot foggier. I hope that you guys are safe. I hope that you're healthy. I hope that when you get the opportunity, always be kind. Everybody needs to be kind. The world would be so much better if we made simple decisions just to treat each other better. And never forget that I love you guys. I hope you have a great day. Catch you next time.